Okay, great. So today I'm going to talk to you guys about agility and Scrum and what that actually means in terms of product development and software development. Okay, so this was a really funny quote I thought from when I went to the conference I went to recently. One of the people who was giving a presentation said agility is like teenage sex. Everyone's talking about it, no one's doing it. And so this kind of rang true to me, especially because agility is definitely turned into a buzzword that you hear, like companies put it on their websites in like big bold letters. People are like, oh yeah, we're agile. And like no one ever talks about what does that actually imply for a product's development, and what actually like does that mean for both the people who are developing the product and also for the key stakeholders or the client team who's going to be receiving the product. Okay, so recently at like the end of last year, I did kind of a survey with a lot of different people and asked everyone what agility meant, or what they thought it meant. And here's some of the answers I got. So all of these are right in different ways, and they're all also missing like pretty big factors in different ways. I wouldn't say any of these definitions is exactly right, but they all have truths to them. So here's the like official definition of agile software development. It's a group of software development methodologies that's based on iterative development where requirements and solutions evolve through collaboration between self-organized cross-functional teams. The words I highlighted in pink are kind of the most important words in that sentence. And I'm going to go through them. So the first word is iterative. That's one we all know and we all hear about a lot. It just means that you do something and then you do it again, and hopefully, right, you learn from that and you redo it and you do it better. The next word is evolve, meaning things will change as you go, and you should expect that. And in fact, a huge part of any agile methodology is that you expect it to change as you go. The next one is collaboration. So that is everyone working together, and that's becomes super important when you look at the self-organized and the cross-functional teams. I'm going to talk about cross-functional teams first. So a cross-functional team is just a team of people that are not all siloed into different departments. How we work at Yeti is a good example of that. We have our biz dev people talking directly to our designers who are working ideally right next to our developers and are talking about tickets and are scrumming all together. Rather than having developers scrum together and not really interact with designers, but do a handoff, which is a much more waterfall effect. And then the self-organizing is the part that is a little bit trickier because it seems to imply that there is no leadership, when in fact that's definitely not the case. It implies that the managers actually have a harder job because they have to organize teams and give them enough direction that they together are independently able to come up with a way that they want to be managed, and then to support that. It's not just letting everyone go off willy-nilly. It's kind of creating this environment where those conversations can happen, and you can get really good work done because everyone is bought into the same idea. So what is agility really? Like I talked about before, it's become this huge buzzword, and it actually doesn't mean anything. It means a lot of different things. It means Scrum is a certain way of doing agile software development. Kanban is another way. Lean Developer, XP. Currently, probably Lean Developer, Scrum, and Kanban are like the three biggest out there, with most people doing Scrum, some people doing Kanban. And it's also definitely more of a state of mind than anything else. So what I'm talking about when I say that is that Scrum and Agile isn't like a particular thing. It's really hard to pin down. It's more of this state of mind of being open to creating a good team and creating an environment where you can get the best possible work done, and being open to the fact that that might change based on team, that might change based on company, and no one answer is always going to be correct. This is the Agile Manifesto. So it's what all like Scrum Masters, Scrum practitioners, Kanban practitioners, anyone who practices an Agile methodology looks to. So I'll read it out. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we've come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. Probably the most important part of this is actually the text at the very bottom of the screen that says that the values on the right side are actually still very important, but when push comes to shove, we want to be valuing the things on the left side more. So a little bit of history. Agile was started, actually it can be traced back to like the 1950s with evolutionary project management. And so it became really more of a thing on its own when software development came about, especially in like the 90s. And then in 2001, the Agile Manifesto was created by a group of software developers who wanted to find a more like cohesive way to do things. Okay, so that brings us to Scrum. So Scrum is one way of practicing Agile. It's the way that we practice Agile at Yeti. The term actually comes from rugby. So at like the start of, I guess, like a rugby game or a rugby play, the rugby players come into this formation up on the screen. It's called a scrum, and they like drop the ball into the middle of it. And then that's how you decide possession. And so Scrum's key values are focus, courage, openness, commitment, and respect. Scrum is a really great framework for addressing really complex software development problems. And to do this, it needs the team to have a lot of focus, a lot of courage to tackle difficult problems, a lot of willingness to be open with each other and with the team, commitment to solving the problem, and also having respect for each other's like different viewpoints and different experiences. So who are the key players in Scrum? The first key player I'm going to talk about is the product owner. Their main role is to inspire the team, build the product backlog, and provide the team with feedback. Their focus should really be on bigger picture things like who are the target users, where are the market opportunities, what's the long-term strategy. They are in charge traditionally of managing stakeholder requests and also keeping a clear picture of the product's priorities. They also should be providing ongoing feedback to the Scrum team, and they have final approval of product priorities. So the next player in Scrum is the Scrum Master. That's me. Their main goal is to help the team, help the product owner, encourage evolving engineering practice, and just in general keep things organized. Ideally, the job of the Scrum Master is also to be constantly trying to remove impediments so that the team can spend as much of their time and flow as possible instead of like responding to client emails or trying to figure out how to solve a problem. There also should be there to help support the product owner to understand what Agile requirements are and also to help coordinate the backlog. And then just in an organization in general, they're there to help advocate for Agile. And they talk a lot about this idea of servant leadership, which is basically that you can be the best leader of a team by talking to your team and figuring out what they need and providing them the solution to be successful. And then last but not least is the development team. So when I say development team, I'm not just talking about software engineers. I'm also talking about designers. It could be someone who is just there to do A/B testing with you. It's anybody who is involved in building the product in any way. Usually they're cross-functional, and they should be. They are usually self-organizing, like we talked about before. And then they have the technical domain knowledge and expertise to actually be able to build the product. And they actually have a lot more control in Scrum than in traditional like project structure because they have the expertise, and so therefore they also have the right to do whatever needs to be done within the project boundaries, which should be defined at the beginning of a project. So that usually is like making the call about what programming language to use, making the call about what the best like design structure would look like, depending on what the boundaries of the project are, if that's something that they've been given like the allowance to do, deciding who to talk to in interviews. And they also own the speed of development. So it's within their right to say, we develop at like 7 points per week, or we develop at 4 points per week. And the Scrum Master and the product owner can push back on that, but they know, and the key stakeholders can push back, but no one can ever say, no, you don't, you develop at 12 points per week. Because they're the ones who actually understand the timing, and they're the ones who, like, if they can't work faster, that you can't tell someone to just work faster. And so Scrum tries to respect that. And then also they have to work with the customers and the product owners to help them understand the domain knowledge. Okay, so what does Scrum actually look like? So I have this super exciting diagram. And I added in a working agreement because that was not already on here, and a backlog refinement. So I'm going to just go over this pretty quickly. So pretty much you have the product owner. The product owner puts user stories into a product backlog. The beginning of the project, you would also create a working agreement with your team, which basically everyone gets together and creates the rules for how you're going to work together. That can range from anything to, on Fridays we get coffee at 3, or it could be something like everyone is 2 minutes early to Scrum, and if you don't arrive on time, then you have to buy us all coffee on Friday. So it's the rules for the team of how they're going to work together. You have sprint planning, you create a sprint backlog, and then you start going into your sprint execution, which is basically iterating, sprint planning, sprint backlog, and then scrumming daily. Ideally, at the end of your sprint, you've created a potentially shippable product which doesn't have bugs in it, which you could demo to a client. And then you have a sprint review, and they're all like pointed correctly and have the right links or information associated with them. So at Yeti, we also have this idea of applied agile. So how does applied agile fit on top of this process? I like to think of applied agile as something that is sort of a zoomed out view of a project process. And so it fits into our process right here in the vision alignment. That's the place where tangibly applied agile touches the Scrum process. And the vision alignment meeting is a meeting that you would have, depending on the course of a project, 1, 2, 3 times. And during that meeting, you would be zooming out a lot and looking at where has the product been, where's the product going, where is the product currently? Is that the right direction for it to be going? Do we need to review? And if we do need to review, do we need now do backlog refinement and make sure that we have the correct tickets and we have the correct user stories? So what are some benefits and downfalls? Benefits, it's really iterative, it's really collaborative, and Scrum is very accountable and very adjustable. Some of the downfalls of Agile or Scrum are it does expect a lot out of a team. It expects a team to be able to take responsibility, be really open with each other, and work together. It also doesn't provide easy answers in a waterfall project. If you are a designer, you kind of just get to hand your work off to the dev team and say, like, I'm washing my hands of this. Don't talk to me again. Whereas if you are doing an Agile Scrum process, you have to really be communicating the whole time. And because also ideally you are communicating with product owners and key stakeholders. If you have an idea that comes up or you think something should be done differently, then you have to have some difficult conversations with managers, CEOs, whoever your key stakeholders are. And then it also just does require a lot of accountability from a team. Because of the 2 items I just talked about, it is harder to blame the process when you are a part of creating the process. And Scrum, a team should be constantly looking at how they're working together and what they could be doing better. And part of that is always at a certain point going to be admitting when you've made a mistake and then looking to adjust to that mistake. So yeah, that's all I have. Are there any questions?